Hey, coaches, Kurt Twichell, Portage Central High School defense coordinator and linebackers coach. I'm going to talk to you today about defending the spread option and just some of the general stuff that we get into, and I'm going to talk about some different considerations that as you build your defense, whether you're maybe a new coordinator or looking for some new ideas. Hopefully be able to take a couple things out of this, but at this point in time, hopefully everybody's getting some good news as far as being able to get back and working with your kids and whatnot. Pretty exciting to have that as a possibility and kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So, kind of getting sick of doing the quarantine stuff a little bit, but it's been a really good, we'll call it a quarantine off season as far as all the information that's out there. And hopefully you found the time to watch some of these clinics or expand your horizons a little bit and improve yourself as a coach and help improve your program and your kids. So, again, hopefully you can take something out of this as we kind of talk about defending the spread option. Let's see, click over here. And my screen's nice and frozen, so I apologize. But it's all right. Just my background there at Portage Central. This has been my 7th year coming into PC. It'd be my 3rd year as defense coordinator. Spent time at White Pigeon before that, and then grew up and played and coached for Charlie Lusky at Hazlitt before then. Really enjoy living here in Portage and being a part of the Mustang family. We're Division II school, about 1,400 kids in our school, and head coach Mick Enders, pretty involved in the association. So, a lot of guys know Mick. Very fortunate to be involved in a program that is a lot of tradition, a lot of support, and as always, just trying to keep elevating things to the next level. But have a very good foundation, a very good place to really coach and teach and raise our family that we're really excited to be here and continue growing. So tonight, as we talk about defending spread options, just a quick agenda. We'll talk a little bit about kind of the evolution of how things have changed, especially in 2020, even just in the past decade, with the stuff that we've had to adjust to defensively, obviously, and those option principles kind of remaining somewhat the same. But one thing obviously is defining your defensive roles within your structure, within your coverage, whatever call you're in. We'll talk about that and kind of generalize that out a little bit so that we're speaking from a standpoint where it doesn't necessarily matter if you're an even front or an odd front or single high or two high. We're a big quarters team at Portage Central, so we play with 2 high safeties, and we've kind of jumped between odd and even fronts as the years have gone through, just personnel wise and stuff like that. But we'll talk from that standpoint, but a lot of the stuff is applicable to whatever front or coverage that you find yourself running. Structure obviously there's the function, and then we'll talk about kind of the holy grail of the option team is the B gap, and how we game that up and try to defend both B gaps on either side, and what that kind of means as far as trying to make an option team maybe a little bit more, for lack of a better word, maybe more predictable as far as what you're going to see to each half of your structure and how you can use that to your advantage as a coordinator to put your kids in the best possible positions. We'll talk about a little bit about clouding the read up for the quarterback, the guy making the reads, and how to think about putting that in the hands of that kid and taking it out of the hands of the coordinator who's calling the plays. Lots of different ways that we can get into that, and we won't hit all of them tonight. I'll show you just some really basic ones that we do without giving away all the state secrets. But now it's just a lot of stuff that we can do, and we'll talk about some basic ones, and we'll look at some film when we're all done here too with that. Evolution of the option, obviously, it's a phenomenal offense. Probably as you look at different schemes around the state and around the entire country, if it's not the most popular, it's right up there. And we're an option team at Portage Central. We've been split back here for the better part of 40 years, and we've kind of dabbled in some of the one back stuff. So I get to defend this a little bit in the preseason and in camp when we're going against each other and all that. But it stood the test of time. It's gone from that traditional triple with either 2 backs or even wishbone type stuff to now, when teams spread it out a little bit, as we'll kind of talk about tonight, some of the one back stuff, and then evolving obviously into the RPOs, which can hit pre or post snap. And obviously as defensive coaches, we got to be mindful of now not just our front, but also your coverage and how that plays a role in making sure that you are option sound. But one thing to remember, they have to execute too, and you got to try to find different ways, obviously, to make them execute and not make it easy and try to muddy some things up and kind of go from there. But people obviously are very well coached these days, And option football, what it does, it amplifies mistakes, right? Mistakes that are made are going to be noticeable, and makes you play sound assignment football, meaning that it's always tested your discipline as far as kids knowing what to do and then executing it on our side. It's going to test your structured. Are you sound to the different formations that you see and how those offensive coordinators try to game you up and spread you out, but then also maybe create different gaps and motion and different things. So structurally have to be sound in what you're seeing on both sides. And also the adaptability portion, obviously having change ups in different ways you can present stuff to that offense. But in addition to all that stuff, the option that's always done, now it's kind of in the modern spread option, we're kind of a lot more eye discipline, right? As far as lots of motion, whether it's change of strength, might be jet motion, might be orbit motion, keeping your kids locked into their job and their responsibilities and not maybe taking the eye candy at times. Then obviously what does the spread do? It spreads the field, makes you defend the entire width. So you got to be able to tackle in space. And that's just something that is prevalent in just about every single level of football right now. So, tackling space obviously is a big deal. And then tempo is another thing, obviously, that guys are pairing up to make it that much more difficult for you to get your calls in and get lined up. And obviously, if you can't adjust to tempo in this era, then you might be in a little bit of trouble. So we've had to evolve defensively to be able to minimize our verbiage and our terminology to be able to match that same process that the offense have gone through. So, being able to get lined up and then limiting things down to just maybe 1 or 2 word calls where you can get something in and get guys moved and not stay just static, which we'll talk a lot about that tonight as far as not staying static. But the RPO game obviously now has forced all 11 defenders, as we kind of alluded to. All 11 guys are locked in some form or fashion to where they are option responsible. They play some role. It's not just, just the front guys now. So just a quick list to you guys of things that in my experience and that will get you beat. And been fortunate enough, I guess we'll use the word fortunate or unfortunate, to play against some really good option teams. And we played Mona Shores a few years ago in the playoffs. And, Matt Kozak does just a phenomenal job up there. Obviously, they won the state title this past year and played them in the past and had a little bit of a long night. But, you live and you learn. And, different guys on our side of the state, Rob Zeitman at Jenison and Brent White at Muskegon, different guys that we've ran into and played against over the years. It's fun, but it hasn't always been as much fun. But just in my experience, guys, things that get you beat is within your defensive structure, not having necessarily a home base, a set of option rules that are already kind of naturally built into the structure of your defense. So a lot of times you see guys that talk about changing up their defense to defend a certain scheme every week and kind of playing the flavor of the week. And right or wrong, I don't know where I'm at on this, but I don't know if that's always necessarily the best case as far as the consistency in teaching your players from week to week, whether it's defending the spread or maybe defending full house T. Sometimes you see guys get into different stuff, and I just know that with my kids and where we coach, that just wouldn't work for us. So, my thoughts is that if you have to change your defense, then you got to take a long, hard look at what your base defense really is, and you can find ways to get your rules set up within your defense to defend what you need to do, what you're seeing there. Staying static, kind of alluded to that, trying to fit up based on your option rules every single snap. Well, that's all well and good. And, certainly on a whiteboard, you can find things that should put you in position to make plays. But, those guys, the Matt Kozaks of the world, they will find your weakness. They will. Okay. And if you're going to do that, then you better have the bigger, stronger, and faster kids. If that's how if you can play that simple against an option team, well, then, in my opinion, you better be better than they are. And that's not always the case, obviously. Trying to do too much, having different stop calls and different things that maybe you gamed up as in part of the game plan that week. Obviously, you don't want to overload your kids and try to do something just radical and completely different than what you're good at and what you've repped out. Because we talked about option amplifying mistakes. Well, something hasn't been coached up as well or repped out as much throughout the week. Well, one missed opportunity, one missed responsibility against a good team who's well coached, right? That's a fight song play, as we call it. I mean, it's not our fight song. So, those are things there that just kind of as we go through and talk about, we want to stay away from all that and try to find ways to get things kind of hopefully back in our favor, right? Defining your defensive roles. And this goes back to not just talking about one front or coverage that you're in, but regardless of what you are, every call that you have, you should have those three roles defined at each half of the formation with the option to be able to hit on either side, in theory. And, a lot of guys use the terminology for the dive player. We use that as well. So that's the guy who's taking the immediate vertical threat, often the guy that's being read. And then, a word that we've kind of started using, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but we define the next guy as, we call it the high player. And that's kind of the edge of the core, the edge of the box, who's often going to be your pitch key, or maybe who they're loading up in their double option stuff. But that's terminology we use is dive and high, and then obviously the third one, the pitch player, who's got to make stuff happen in space if needed. So, going back to the high player, I think we got to be really careful. And this is from experience, talking to your players in terms of opponent positions, right? So like the phrase, you have the QB, well, that might work in some cases in some teams, but option rules, you're going to play teams that are maybe doing both zone read and maybe power read, where that's inverted a little bit. Power read, when it first came about, was called inverted veer. And in that case, if you go back to defining the dive and the high player, well, the quarterback and the running back are flipped in those instances. So, we've had times when we were kind of first getting into seeing some power read stuff where, we went 1 week of talking about, hey, you're on the running back and the quarterback, and then play a power read team, and kids get a little bit confused. So we got to make sure that our language is consistent with all the different types of options that you can see, right? And so that's something that I just think we got to be really careful about defensively with how we're speaking to our kids in terms of using that terminology, right? Talked a little bit earlier about option teams and what are they looking for? And to me, defensively, building your structure around defending option, right? It kind of goes back to the open B gap. And, what is it? I call it the infinity gauntlet of the option. If they control it, then we're in trouble. And, obviously in different structures, different fronts, you're going to close that B gap in some fronts and have it open in others, and close on one side, open on another, or both, or neither. But, that open bubble, for the longest time at Portage Central with our splitback stuff, we only ever ran inside veer really to the one technique where that B gap was open. But the idea being there that those option teams, it allows them the maximum flexibility to attack stuff vertically, but then also have the option, right, to go horizontally with it. So, finding that bubble, we'll talk about here just our base rules with how we define our option rules around that. But inside zone, inside veer, that's the fastest route vertically. If that tackle veer releases inside, you can climb and seal your linebacker, and then it's kind of off to the races, right? That's what those option teams are practicing day one with their give reads there, right? As simple as it can get. So you want to make sure that obviously you're taking away that as just a main principle defending the option, is taking away the dive stuff first, right? But there you go. So option rules are built around defending the B gaps, and just knowing where you have it open and where it's closed. That can give you, I won't use, you can never speak in absolutes with the option guys, because they have so much stuff in their package, and have so many different answers to things that they see, and just do a phenomenal job. But it can give you a little bit of a prediction in your scouting report as to what you're going to see, right? You're going to see midline to that 3 technique. You're going to see, inside veer, inside zone more, maybe to that open B gap bubble. So you can kind of game stuff up a little bit to be able to protect yourself and know what you're going to see. And then, having different ways to close it, obviously. If you know where it is and know that that's where they're going to attack it, got to be able to close it. Either that happens pre-snap, as far as, maybe getting in a different structure, a different front, or post-snap with line movement and different inserts and different ways to kind of close that up. And I'll show you a couple different ways that we do that. But just kind of illustrate what I'm talking about here, I just drew up a standard kind of 4-3 front against 10 personnel, 2x2. In this case, we have strong left. And how we set our front, this is how we coach it from day one, talking about option responsibilities, right? There's a lot of different rules and ways that guys set their front, and a lot of it is based on obviously your scouting report and what you see. And just kind of as a base rule, Portage Central, if we see 2x2, 10 personnel, we're typically setting our front of the field. Some guys will set it to the back, but setting that to the field here, I'll kind of talk about that in just a little bit, but helps to protect the wide side and pushing your nickel kid out of the fit a little bit, and allowing him to cover down to that slot and play action pass and RPOs and different things that we're seeing. But that can be a problem too, where if they got a really good kid at running back, right, and you don't always want to game it up to where he's getting a give read all the time, and you're letting that kid tee off on you for 25, 30 carries a game, because he's bound to bust one even if you're pretty sound. So the way that this is camp rules, right? To the strength, strong left in this case, that B gap's closed. So if we think about it, our Mike there in the middle is an A gap player, and what we call then our strong side defensive end in that case, he's going to be the high player when that B gap's closed. So our kids know, day one install, strong left, strong right. If you're that strong side defensive end, then you're the high player against any type of option, right? If you're getting red, you're not going to squeeze all the way down and take the dive. Got to keep those shoulders square. And what we call that surf technique is kind of common terminology that guys have used defensively, maybe around the country. But what that means that I'm still going to block down, step down with the offensive tackle, but keeping those shoulders square and just trying to neutralize that wide threat. And, sometimes I would say that wide threat is more of a threat some weeks than he is in others, depending on the type of dude they got back there. And whether it's the quarterback or whether it's, the slot kid coming across on jet read. But, we'll talk a little bit about a line to perform. But those guys there know that, hey, if I'm to the strong side here, I'm the high player. I'm holding that read. I'm making sure that ball is getting handed off in our base defense, right? And the reason for that being, if you just kind of look at the geometry of how this works out, right, your Mike, he's an A-gap player. Well, you don't want to ask him to scrape all the way outside and potentially get walled off. Even if, they're running, let's say, just zone read and trying to get that guard tackle double team in the 3 technique. Well, working up to your Mike, that can be something there where he can get walled off pretty quickly. That's a long way to go, right? And putting a guy in a bad spot to have to get out there and make a play against some fast kids in space is not always going to be a winning business model. So that's kind of the reason there we talk about the strong side defensive end being the high player in our base defense, right? And then, so going along with that, our overhang and our nickel kind of down here to the side, okay, he would be the pitch player, which that what does the pitch mean in the modern RPO game? That can be a bubble. It can be a hitch. It could be a true pitch phase from, a true triple team in the slot coming across the other side. But, kind of talked about this earlier, but set against these 10 personnel teams, wherever you set your 3 technique, if you're a 2-high team, if you're a quarters team or cover 2, that allows that kid to be, we call him the pause player. He can hang in his alignment and get that full cover down, be able to get his reroutes on that slot, again, RPO play action pass, because he doesn't necessarily have a run gap in 10 personnel. And as you get into maybe 11 personnel or 20, where that extra gap's going to be created, right, even to the boundary, there's different ways that you can get even your corner or your safety involved in being that 7th fitter and allow that guy to be pushed out of the fit. And I'll show you an example of that a little bit later for how we can do that. But he'd be the pitch player in this phase, and then the safety is going to be kind of crack replacing if that slot cracks down. So that's how that looks on the strong side. To the weak side, right, this is where we talk about, again, that open B gap and that will down at the bottom of our screen here. He's technically going to be a full player, right? On a whiteboard, he's responsible for that B gap. So if he gets the ball in the belly, he's got to attach and become a part of the fit. He's the 6th fitter in this gap. So, talking about the ideal, what do these teams want in the zone read and inside veer? You're going to get that double team up to the Mike, get that veer release to the will, and try to pin him either inside or out. And you got a clear alley for that back to hit up vertical and get a house call. So, we talk about our weak side kid. We got strong left in this case. We're on the right side of the defense. He's the dive player. And we kind of coach that up as, your chain is being pulled in the direction of our strength. So the right side defensive end, if he hears that strong left, he just knows that he's going to be down violently and hard. He's going to reroute that offensive tackle and try to get that scrape exchange out there for that will, where the defensive end squeezes down and takes the dive. Okay, just base rules again. Right, so the Will's a high player. We do cloudy clear rules as far as our linebacker fits and try to keep it just really simple with that. So even though he's a B-gap player, right, the defensive end is closing and taking that B-gap post-snap, right? So that allows our Will to gap exchange that and get out wide for that first threat as the high player, right? To the boundary, if you're a 2-high team, your safety is going to be your pitch player, or if you're a cover 3 and you're rolling weak and he's down there on top of the slot, then he's your pitch player as well, and free safety's running the alley. But in a 2-high, we got one less body to the boundary than we do to the strength. So the good thing in this game in high school with the hash being so wide is field dimensions. Another big reason that we set our 3 technique to the field is just the field dimensions and the space that is constricted by alignment, by math to the boundary. So the sideline is our friend. And then that's where you can, as obviously being down one, you can have it get into your different things as far as boundary support. For example, a trap corner there might be playing cover 2 to the boundary at times, where you can, take outside leverage on that number 1 and push in and be the late pitch player with your corner there. Is a way that you can get some extra stuff for you to the boundary, right? Okay, and then aligning the defensive ends to the strong side and then to the weak side. So we call what we call a wide 5 and a heavy 5. So out of our even front here, align and perform. Got to align to do your job. We call that ATP. If I'm the wide 5 on the left there, strong left, I can see that mesh occur, and I can see any pullers maybe coming my way. Maybe it's split zone from 20 personnel. Maybe it's a true gap scheme. We're still going to spill all that stuff. We're a big spill defense, but it allows us to get that vision and be able to sit out there and hold that quarterback if it's zone read, or give us that width to be able to take the guy on the jet, right? Be able to tackle that jet and motion obviously is going to be a big indicator on that jet read stuff, where you got to widen out and be able to play that, right? I've got a pretty good example on film later on of motion coming right at our kid who's going to be that high player for us, and he just doesn't align out there and just ran right by. It didn't matter. Quarterback didn't need to read it at all. So that's our wide 5. Our heavy 5. Heavy is the name kind of implies. He's going to heavy up on that offensive tackle, and we call it a 4.5, right? Where if a 4 is head up and 5 is outside shade, it's kind of a 4.5. But it allows you to get that squeeze down. It allows you to get that jam on that tackle. Got to get hands on. You cannot let those guys free release, even if you do scrape out. But that also gives us the ability, when teams have that change up on the offensive side, where if they're going to base that guy out and then maybe insert the running back and the quarterback follows, that what we do is we call that our deuce read, where we get based out. We try to sling that blocker outside and then fit it back in and get that natural gap exchange now, where that Will becomes that C gap player instead of the B gap player, if that kind of makes sense. We'll kind of look at that maybe on film a little bit later. Okay, but gap exchanges are going to be just in your base defense, just a huge part of how you defend the option. It goes back to a lot of the stuff that we just talked about, being cloudy clear with the linebackers, being open close windows. But what we tell our backers is, you've got that gap right in front of you until there isn't one. And it's on your defensive end. It's on your buddy to close that for you. And, as far as scraping out, really, in terms of where that linebacker is on the field, there's not much lateral movement. It actually ends up being a lot more downhill in reality than it does when you're drawing it up on paper. But, that's just something that, obviously just sound defensive principles, regardless of what you're doing, especially in even front, got to be well schooled in the whole block down, step down stuff. Got to be able to hammer down on that read key, that tackle, right? Could be the 3 technique, hammering down on the guard, running midline, but trying to prevent or trying to slow that climb to the second level. Got to be able to hit your key. Got to be able to. That's day 1 for D-line. We talked about that being just something that occurs in that scrape and zone reader inside zone, and then also for your mic in that midline, the 3 technique. Okay, crappy drawing, I apologize. So on the left here, kind of got it drawn up a little bit, and then the red is going to be the path of that 3 technique, and the blue would be that block down from the guard. This is like a traditional midline look, reading the 3 technique, trying to hammer that guard down. And then again, I kind of said just a little bit ago, there's really not much lateral movement that's going to happen. Truthfully, the way that it works out in game, it's more downhill, right? Get that? It's a natural exchange that doesn't force you to really scrape out and lose your downhill power position as an inside backer. Okay, this is on the right over here, kind of did this on Go Army Edge and kind of took a screenshot just as it was kind of playing out. But this would be the guard here trying to release up to the mic and then getting that squeeze down, right? And then the scrape coming outside from that mic. That's what we're talking about there. Okay. All right, so that was just really basic even front rules. And again, you can adapt that with being an odd front guy, whether 33 stack or whatever it is, but just knowing where the B gap is and how you can game up your dive player and your high player, right? And then your pitch player plays off of that, obviously. But that's how we do it in our even front and our camp rules. And as we get into our change-ups, right, staying static, we alluded to this, says it's going to get you beat. Those good OCs, they have answers to everything, right? They do. It's just it's criminal I don't like it either, but they got answers to everything. And you've got to be able to have different things in your tool belt as well that you can throw at different times and stay a little bit unpredictable. But staying static will get you beat, right? And your change-ups, those can happen in multiple ways. If you have multiple fronts, if you've installed those as you go, maybe over front, bare front, maybe you do get into some odd stuff or vice versa, get into even from your odd stuff. But having multiple fronts, maybe in some pre-snap shifts, we do a little bit of that where when we get lined up and then got a little, indicator where we'll kick over to something a little bit different. That's a way obviously that you can change some stuff up and maybe not as much as far as the quarterback read, but a little bit of indecision, a little bit of doubt in those offensive line guys, as far as their pathway. You can do a little bit there to get that screwed up. But I'll put this one in bold. This is my favorite way to do it is from post-snap line movements, right? Quarterback gets up there, gets a picture, sees everything, and maybe looks over and gets his new check from his OC who knows everything about everything, right? But now it's on when you get that post-snap movement, now it's on the kid to execute, right? It's on the 16-year-old kid at quarterback to be able to see what's going on and make the right decision. So post-snap live movements, we're pretty big on that at Portage Central as far as having different ways that we can present a new picture, right? Show you on film a little bit later, just a really simple exchange that we do with, just talking about that will and that weak side defensive end. We'll tell that will kid we've got a simple call where he can just hold and he'll exchange as the high player, and that will insert in the B gap as the dive kid. So that's just a really simple one, really cheap install you can get into. But then obviously rolling your coverage. If you're a 2-high team, you can roll down to 3 or 1 and send some pressure. Or those are all different pictures. But that all being said, you got to still define within those who your dive kid is, who your high player is, who your pitch kid is. Right? And you've got to practice that. There's give and take with that, obviously, and not doing too much, as we kind of said earlier. If you start doing too much, then it only takes one mess up there to get a house call. So, mentioned that their post-snap movement, whether it's rolling the coverage or line movement, puts it on the quarterback. Take that decision off of the guru coach who's looking at your front and has an eye in the sky up there telling them what you're in, and then they can make the perfect play call. They take the onus off those guys and give it to the kid. Right, gives the opportunity to hold the chalk the longest. Okay, hopefully the last. That's always the battle. Okay, adjusting the front, I'll show you just one simple change up that we've done in the past and other guys do, but one of our favorites has been just really simple, just a weak side reduction. We'll get into from just a standard over front. We'll get down into our bare front, where that's just, if I look down at this picture down here, this is our nose, who would be the one technique to the left in this case. We got strong right on. Okay, he's kicked over into kind of the front side A gap. Our 5 technique has kicked down into the B gap here in this case. Right, and then we keep the 3 technique, maybe kicking them out even to a 4-eye, and then we got our wide 5 here. And that's just a different way to close both B gaps. That makes it really difficult to get all the double teams that inside zone teams want to get. They cannot get double teams across the front when you're in this kind of tight front, is what a lot of guys call it. If you've seen some of that stuff online, kind of been a little bit of a rage the past couple of years, and we hopped on board with that for a little bit. But as we found out, it does make you more vulnerable to some outside stuff, obviously, and some fold schemes, and there's give and take with that. When we played Mona a couple of years ago, we were doing some of that from our odd front, pinching down, right? And then they did a great job of running their fold stuff where the guards would kick out and the tackles would fold underneath, and they'd read that nose, and we hadn't seen that on film, from other odd fronts that they played against and whatnot. It was a long night. Quarterback had a good night, so. But live and learn. But we can get into that either as a shift pre-snap or move to it from a post-snap, from a half line movement. All this really is, that's just changing up 2 guys. That's the 5 technique kicking down, and then the 1 technique scraping over top of the center. So that's one just quick front adjustment you can get into from an over front pretty easily, or from an under front if you're a 4-down team. Okay, full line movement. We use 2 of them. We call, not just 2 of them, but in regards to option game, we'll use an indicator to slant to the back or slant away from. We call that stab and saber. So stab stands for slant to a back. Saber, slant away. And got stab drawn up down there. This works well against teams that will offset their back and give you an idea of where that mesh is going to hit and maybe where the RPO is going to be read from. But then, a lot of these spread option guys obviously are pistol guys. And It makes it a little bit tougher in that case, but you just try to game up where you're going to send your slants against pistol based on film study and some different things. So what that does is just, it's really cheap install. There's no need to change up your coverage necessarily with this. It's predetermined gap exchanges. And I said this a little bit earlier too, that I drew up 11 personnel down here with the tight end set to the boundary, so that seventh gap getting created there. Typically in just a base call, this linebacker would be a fold kid back into the B gap from the field. This is a way too that if you're seeing some RPO stuff to the field or seeing some play action pass and you try not to leave your safety out on an island against a good kid at the slot, we'll use our stab call there at times to be able to slant our line back to the field and push that overhang out of the fit, and we'll drop that safety down into where now he's going to be gap responsible for the widest gap, that D gap in that case. So that's a cheap way too against some RPO stuff that you can get some movement created. Okay. Pressures, we do a few of them. I did a little bit of a clinic on, if anybody's seen Coach Bancher's YouTube channel on, we call blitz in the formation. I talked about this pressure we call it Texas. This is just America's blitz, just our simple, overhang pressure and then rolling down to cover three deep, three under. That's a way there to get some line movement. If you were looking at this from 2x2, 10 personnel, normally we'd have the B gap closed. So we got a high player here who's going to be holding the quarterback. In this case, we run that Texas, get that line movement with the edge pressure. We'll move him down into being closing the B gap where he's the dive kid now. And then that overhang becomes the high player and the safety's rolling down for the pitch. So that's a really cheap, simple pressure that just about everybody runs from too high. So that's one there. But, last thing before we get into some film, talk about 3x1 considerations or motion considerations that create 3x1, which obviously a lot of the spread option is going to find different ways to formation you and make sure that you are sound structurally to where you're not leaving yourself vulnerable to the boundary, right, where you've vacated, because 3x1 is unbalanced by nature, right? So are we sound to the boundary is the first thing that we look at. Speed option is a big one that can come back and hit counter, or you can get that return motion from that 2x2. So making sure that, I got drawn up down here that if you over rotate with bringing down that field safety, and I don't know why he's kicked that he should be wider, and then rotating that boundary safety, the middle third, when you see that option, right? Well, that's all well and good to the front side, but you can get gamed up pretty bad coming back to the boundary. So I think it's really important, especially if you do, whether you base out of single high stuff or if you were planning on rolling to it to any orbit motion or jet motion, got to be really careful about that and over rotating, because that stuff coming back the other way, you can get out leveraged pretty quickly. So 3x1 with the even front, we always set our strength away from 3x1. We go from an over front to what you call an under front, I guess. But the idea being there that you can protect that that will with the three technique, and then put your Mike into where he's that high player doing that gap exchange. He's the new will, right? You're going to get that open B gap right there. He becomes the high player. He can cover out to his number 3 in pass coverage and be able to play out there, and then have different stuff to the boundary, whether you're using a trap corner or bailing and dropping down your safety. You can do some of that stab stuff as well to push that Mike out of the fit. Same stuff. All right. Okay, enough just straight up talking from me. Let's watch a little bit of film here. Got a few things, nothing super crazy. But we'll look here. We'll start off. We're going to watch some scrimmage film. We scrimmage Jennison and Rockford and Byron every year, and Coach Zeitz at Jennison is one of the good guys in the sport, and just a phenomenal guy, phenomenal coach. And we do camp with them a little bit, and obviously in August, right? Not even at week 1 yet, just scrimmaging. They've got just their basic stuff in, and then so do we. But this is just some good illustrations here of stuff that we work on defensively in camp, and then against just some really basic inside veer stuff. So I'll show you just a couple clips of who's the dive player and who's the high player and all that, and talk you through this right now. We're in an under front of the field, so we got our 5 technique here, and we do have an open B gap to the field, and then here comes that jet motion. So 1 technique, and we got a B gap responsible Mike right there. Okay, so we're going to see inside veer coming to the field with a true pitch face coming behind. You're going to see our 5 technique really squeeze down and take the dive, right? So I'll pause right there. He's down, hands on. That's good. All right, the Mike is thinking, I'm a B gap player until there isn't a B gap. So now he's going to get that scrape. He's got to scrape tight. Don't want to scrape out too wide, because then you're talking about the quarterback being able to stay vertical and hump it up in there. Maybe he scrapes out square shoulders on the quarterback right now. And then, obviously Zeitz is yelling at his slot over here, not getting a block on our pitch guy. But if they did block our pitch key, right, we're a crack replace team in quarters coverage, getting that safety down there, kind of running late. But, missed the tackle on the edge, but just showing you right there how that option is supposed to be fit up, right? And then kind of a similar clip here coming back to the field, going the opposite way now. Okay, freezer right here, same thing. Get the veer release up here, get down on the dive. Okay, get the scrape out. And he goes a little wide here, right? So we don't want that big gap right here. Okay, don't want that big gap. We've got a little bit of a battle happening here on the edge, and the safety is going to be down, crack replacing on that pitch. Okay, boundary safety in this case for us. As motion goes away, we're not over rotating. He's just stemming down and playing counter boot reverse. Got to stay home for any of that stuff coming back opposite. Okay, but in this case, we do have our 3 technique to the boundary. Okay, we do put a 3 out there to kind of protect our will in that case. Okay, a little bit further away, so I apologize. And this is again kind of the same thing. So I'm just gonna move on to the next one. But there's our mic scraping out, and then there's our pitch player comes free again. Okay, I guess that's TFL. Right, so that's how you draw it up. And obviously, the opponent here doesn't have all their gadgets in and all that stuff. That they're running their base stuff, and so are we. So pretty good job there as far as just with the base responsibilities. Okay, this one, we did do our stab call here. Okay, and the back's in pistol, so we just sent it to the field. So we should have that 5 technique right now, who is really the dive player. The way that we're aligned pre-snap he hears that slant left call, right? So he just knows pulling that chain now that I'm going to kick out and be the high player. I'm going to hold the quarterback. Our 1 technique should be getting across the face in the B gap. And then we had that mic on an insert right now in the A. So you'll see that the 3 technique doesn't get across, the 1 doesn't get all the way across, and our mic just kind of buries in, right? But here's our DN playing as the hold player. Okay, and the line movement coming from the boundary does get us that backside defensive tackle. You can't see him right here, but he's the one that does end up getting all the way down to the center's hip and making that play for us, right? But in theory, with that stab call and that insert, right, this one's going to try to climb right now. We're going to try to beat him to the opposite side and then close the B gap with a gap exchange from that 1 technique. Okay, he doesn't move there in that case, but that would be something that we're just a really quick, cheap, easy way that you can just have a 1-word call within your defense that changes up option responsibilities. Okay, this is Jenison scrimmage again in a different year, and you'll see here how messing stuff up as far as option responsibilities can be bad news. We're kind of in that reduced bear front right now. We have the B gaps closed. Okay, so the way that this works out to the field, this Mike here, he should be a little bit wider. He's really a C gap player. We got this one coming in the A gap over here. Okay, Will's in the boundary A gap. All right, but you can see that the Mike, he needs to get outside that tackle. A little bit easier now for them to arc on a 4-eye. Okay, but you'll see here that our pitch guy comes in and takes the quarterback. Right, so you got to trust what your other guys are doing. Trust what your teammates are doing, system defense. Okay, so we don't have anybody on the pitch. Right, we got 2 guys on as the high player playing the quarterback right now, and the ball gets pitched out. Okay, but just great effort and hustle from our Mike out there to get out and get the kid down in space. But we lost him in that scrimmage. He got hurt, and that killed us for a few weeks there. So hey, it is what it is. But anyways, okay, when you don't do things right and guys aren't trusting what other guys are doing against the option, you got problems. Okay, you got problems. Here it is again. Same type of thing where they're going to get that arc release to our Mike here, and he's got to align to perform. He cannot get arced by that tackle. Okay, he's got to fit outside, don't go inside, because now here's my guy that just got yelled at about not taking the quarterback and making sure that he's a pitch player just 2 plays ago. Okay, now he's like, well, what the heck, coach? Right? Now there's nobody out there playing the quarterback. So it goes back to trust and doing your job. Right? So just some stuff there that, if you don't do it correctly, strike up the band. Okay? Or at the very worst, turn over the down marker to first down. Okay? Here comes jet read. All these guys run inside veer stuff and pairing up with jet read, right? It's tough stuff. It's tough stuff. It really is. You got to have your guys gamed up as far as being dive players and high players. But here is our high players. He's a first-year player. Okay. when he sees the jet coming across, he should be taking his wider alignment so that he can see the mesh, he can see things happen. Right? He cannot let the ball get outside. He's got to work outside of the lead back. And you'll see that he just kind of sticks in the mud and doesn't do that, and then it's off on the edge. Now you're asking your will to scrape all the way out. Your safety's got one on, okay? Where our will makes a phenomenal play effort-wise, but that's a 7-yard gain, right? So, there's a reason that this offense is extremely popular and effective, because even if you do have things, coached up and your guys are pretty proficient doing things, it only takes one snap for things to go wrong where, against good athletes, you're in trouble. Okay. Speaking of good athletes, we played Muskegon a few years ago. Okay. This is probably 2013, so a while ago. Right. We're kind of in that bear front a little bit. This is kind of a 4-3 with the 4 down guys, one stand-up end here. Okay. And then this would be the boundary safety rolled down. This is a good example here, just that gap exchange to the boundary where this one is working down, and then you get a scrape out of this one. We actually get this other linebacker in on this one too. Okay. And I'm looking over. There's Coach White down there making his call. Love Coach White. One of the best there is. Here you go. Okay. Down on the dive right now. Nobody comes out to take that inside back, or they work the tackle out. Okay. Get the scrape exchange onto the quarterback right now. And, did they screw something up? Yeah. Coach White ticked off. Yeah. But just kind of showing there just the natural principles of that gap exchange and how that looks. Okay. All right. I said don't over-rotate to 3-by-1 or that orbit motion. And here's why, against really good teams. Okay, so here's that. We started off kind of motioning the guy over there, but here comes counter coming back in the opposite slot, and then the guard horning around. So we get one guy kind of kicking over, right? And then we get, our will in this case is hanging out. Well, gets sealed, and hey, there's a really good athlete or a really good player. And not the best structure, and it's a house call, right? So again, just not over rotating to 3-by-1. I think single high teams got to be really careful about doing that. That's why those option guys are running the counter stuff, running that return motion, and trying to game you up. Okay, I'm gonna skip to the end zone film of this so we can see this a lot better. We have a line movement. This is a saber call for us, so we're slanting away from the back in this case. So we're over, and then he's scraping straight down, and we're going to just kind of illustrate here. I'm not sure they were exactly reading this as a zone read, the boundary route. We do get that gap exchange out there and end up having this play it out. Okay, but just a way that, again, just cheap line movement where you don't have to change your coverage, right? And you can get, some different things happening up front for you. Okay, here's jet read again, and this is from our odd front. This is he would be, in this case, this was our dive player, would be our 5 technique. Okay, where he's coming down for the dive, not super aggressive, doesn't obviously get a punch on that tackle like he should. Okay, but our Mike here knows that he is going to be that scrape player here in the odd front that we were in. Okay, force kid going to take the back here. All right, getting the Mike scraping out, gap exchange, defensive end down. Mike is out, tackles chasing him. Okay, and this kid's a great player. He was phenomenal for us. Okay, but out in space there, angle tackle, get him down on that jet read. Okay. All right. That's kind of it as far as film went. Didn't want to take too much time here to keep running through some stuff, but just some really basic stuff there, guys. Kick back over to my slides here and kind of wrap this up a little bit, but hopefully you can see there just kind of how we game up some of our base rules and just a little bit of change up, a little bit of variations here and there. We have more obviously that we can get into, but can't give away everything. I got to play these guys. You know what I mean? So hopefully my computer unfreezes here and I can kick over. All right, there we go. Okay, some take-home points. Just 3 quick ones here. Just what we talk about, kind of break it all down, and what can you take back to your program and your team. First one, obviously, be getting those roles defined. Dive, high, and pitch within all your calls and all your structures. Got to be stuff that you rep out. Got to be stuff that your kids know like the back of their hand, especially when you play these really good teams. Talked a lot about controlling the open B-gap bubble and having different ways to close that open B-gap, whether it's squeezing down that defensive end or getting a true gap exchange there where you're kicking them in and having the other guy insert out, or inserting and having that defensive end hold. Just really cheap, easy ways you can do stuff there. And then obviously don't stay static. pitch your changeups, and then go back and read take home point number 1 again, because your changeups have to be sound, right? They got to be sound, and kids got to know what they're doing. So, it's always a fun chess match, and just really testing the discipline of your kids and how well that you have coached the things that you have installed, but obviously having those different tools within your tool belt to be able to defend some of these guys, as tough as they are, as much as we hate them all, right? No, we love them. So, you go, guys. My contact information right there. I'm pretty active on Twitter, so go ahead and get in touch with me on Twitter if you ever want to. I got a few other clinics that I was fortunate enough to do with Coach Banstra, and did a linebacker one here for the state association. That's my email and my cell phone if you want to shoot me a text or give me a call. But again, really grateful for the association, all the great coaches of the state of Michigan, Coach McElvany for reaching out, and it's an honor to be on here and represent Portage Central and our school and community. And just wish everybody the best here as we move into June, and hopefully getting started with your kids. Really exciting time, and hopefully we can hit the ground running here and not have anything to worry about setback wise, and just get ready to play ball. We need it back. We need ball back. There's no doubt about that. So appreciate you guys, and get in touch. Thanks.